Saw Alex Garland's Civil War about a week ago, and I've really been thinking about it ever since. This is a movie that I know a lot of people are dinging. They're saying, it's apolitical and it's spineless or whatever it might be. I really don't agree with any of that. And it's by no means the movie that I was expecting going into it. And I think a big part of that is the way that it was marketed. It was marketed as this action movie that felt a lot more rooted in a lot of things with the current political climate. But rather than being a one for one thing where, for example, the Nick Offerman character is just a direct parody or representation of Trump, he's more of a subtle representation of these strongman figures like Trump, but it's not a one for one parallel. And he's also not really the focus of the movie. The movie talks about, it's more about like the people on the ground. It's more about us, right? It's more about the average everyday people going through these tumultuous times rather than looking at the root causes of these things. It's looking at the people that look at them and document them, and we are all in our modern society viewers of these atrocities, and all we can do is watch. And the way this movie gets this across is by having its main characters be war photographers. And I think that a lot of people are saying, well, it didn't need to be set in, the near America future, but I think that it does, because it removes it. We can always kind of separate ourselves from these things, but this is showing us that no, these things, they could just as well be happening right here. We could be watching them in our own world, in our own home country, for many of us that watch this movie in the United States. You have a really rich quartet of the four main characters that grow and change across the film, and I think that the main character, Lee, played by Kristen Dunst, and then the kind of who's this hardened war photographer who has just seen all the terrible things and kind of has lost all hope. And then you see the younger, where the more idealistic, essentially, version of her, played by, the younger character played by Katie Lee Spaney, and the way that their arcs kind of cross and intersect. And I won't spoil the ending, but the way that they almost switch in a really fascinating way. There's a line that Lee says early on that becomes incredibly consequential later in the film. So yeah, I can't say any more without getting into spoilers, so just say, in my opinion, this is already the best film of 2024 so far. The 4 months we are into the year. I'll also say that this movie looks spectacular. For a movie about photography, it makes sense that this movie would look so good. It constantly looks absolutely phenomenal and incredible. There's also a lot of really interesting sequences where there is some horrific violence being portrayed on screen, and then you get these pop musical numbers, these needle drops that kind of take the edge off in a way that's almost uncomfortable, in a way that, like, for me at least, echoes the way that we, since the 70s, since the Vietnam War, have been seeing these horrific things, both in wars across the world and, in our own backyard, with police brutality and every other horrible thing that happens. I mean, when I was 11 years old, I watched 9/11 happen live on TV, and the way that we've become desensitized to a lot of these things, and that's what these scenes feel like they're doing with the pop music, is that they are showing you this horrific violence, but it's not hitting as hard because of the music. And then at the end, when you don't get that pop music, it makes that ending feel like it hits that much harder. So yeah, this is a movie I've been sitting with for a while now. If you want to hear even more of my in-depth thoughts, check out the Midnight Film Society. Me and my buddy Damien do that podcast every other week. We broke that one down on our most recent episode. And if you want to hear any other stuff I do, I also do the podcast Underrated, where I talk about an underrated movie every other week too. So yeah, thank you. I've been Derek McDuff. This has been another episode of MicroDose.